This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast coming in Monday afternoon. It's July 29th, and we got more hoops going on with the Olympics underway, so we got more pods we can do. Coming up on today's show, I got Britt Robson here with me. We're going to talk a little bit about what we saw in the first weekend of Olympic hoops, not just Team USA, but obviously we will talk about Ant a little bit. I'm sure we'll talk about KD's big first game. But for me personally, like watching FIBA play, it just kind of gets my brain thinking about those players in their NBA context. So I'm sure we'll bounce that around a little bit. I also took the last week off of episodes completely. So we haven't done a pod since Rob Dillingham's final Summer League game, which was very much his best game and really, I think, kind of more than balanced out Summer League. So we should probably throw that off into the pod ether rather than just leaving everybody with, oh, he's pretty small. This is what I think I said every other episode we did. And then just a few other things happen around the NBA. Tyus Jones signs with the Suns for the minimum, which just got me kind of thinking about the West as a whole. So, and also I have some mailbag questions that maybe we'll mix in it in the end. But Britt, I'll let you choose your own adventure. Where would you like to start with those?
Well, I think the Olympics has been a lot of fun.
Me too.
And more than just, the USA game. There's some really good teams.
I got up on was that Saturday morning. I felt like this weekend was, I don't really watch college football anymore, but like when I used to, you'd be like watch college football all day Saturday and then NFL football all day Sunday. That's what I watched, like 5 games. I watched everyone except for the South Sudan Puerto Rico game. But yeah, I'm having.
I actually saw that game. I saw, but there's a couple I only. You know how the program I have, they also have like a 8-minute breakdown of it.
Yeah.
You can do, and I think I did that for one of the games. Can't remember which one it was, but probably Japan and Germany or something.
That one I fell asleep.
I didn't see Germany.
Germany's good. I like.
I know. Well, Germany is good. I mean, they won it all at the World Cup last time. So, I don't know. I just. Wemby and Gobert, or just Wemby in general, to be honest with you.
It's crazy, man.
Once again, Gobert has trouble fitting in. It is this kind of weird theme, but it's very, very hard to play a classic big next to Wemby.
Maybe I thought we'd start with Ant, but let's actually start. I mean, whatever. This is a Timberwolves podcast. Rudy, let's talk about France. I thought that was the most interesting one in that I watched a few of their exhibition games too, and you kind of get excited about okay, Wemby's running the point. It's like this 4 or 5 pick and roll with Rudy. Like they were kind of trying that in the exhibitions. Right. This one was well, obviously Wemby's inclusion totally changes what France is. Obviously, that would be true of any team.
Yep.
But man, wasn't that so stark in that first game where I've been watching France now since the Wolves traded for Rudy, most of their games. Right. And they were like a Fournier, Gobert, high pick and roll, dribble handoff team. And now you put Wemby at the top of the pecking order, and it completely changes everyone on that team.
Even when he's unselfish, he is the dominant usage guy. I mean, it's just and when they actually put Lesort next to him rather than Gobert, that actually worked. I don't know if that could be sustained because I think teams probably do a lot of heavy scouting of Rudy and Wemby. But those minutes with Lesort in there were kind of a revelation for France too, I would imagine.
I think totally. It's just that they can flip these different styles of play, and I think we talked about this before some too, with the idea for the Wolves of even offensively having more of a way in which you play when Gobert is off the floor versus another way you play when Gobert isn't on the floor. They tapped into that. I think the thing I took from it is in ways, it's gonna sound weird, but in ways Gobert and Wemby aren't a good fit because offensively, because Gobert's main service, right, as an offensive player is creating advantages for
is screening.
Yeah, screening, dribble handoff, or attracting guys on the roll, two bodies when he rolls there. The thing with Wemby and what we saw in that game was let's not try and create any advantages here. He is an advantage in and of himself. So they just started going pretty much letting Wemby play in isolation.
Post him up, draw the double. If he either goes through it. Did you see that one left-handed dunk he made from like, it felt like the foul line?
It was like it was like a fadeaway dunk. Like how is
that left arm went, I think
crazy.
It was fully extended, which meant it was like a 7-foot dunk or an 8-foot dunk. You know, like it's a mid-range shot.
Seriously.
Dunk at the same time. I've never seen that before.
It was.
I mean, I saw him do it a couple times in the NBA, but this one for some reason seemed so stark because he was coming across the lane, with right to left, and just used his left hand and did one of those windmill things where he feels like he's scraping the ceiling with it, and next thing you know, it's in the basket, and he's at mid range. I mean, that's the crazy. It was a dunk at mid range.
It's like a long floater,
a short mid range slam dunk.
Nuts. It is great. I should say, like, Gobert did get in foul trouble in that game early.
Yeah, you're right.
That's what led to Lasort being out there in the first place in the second quarter with Wemby, and then that's when France goes on their run in the second quarter. So they actually didn't start Gobert to start the third quarter. He started on the bench. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see.
If you have both of those bigs on the floor, in some ways, the glue guy, the most important guy in terms of making things happen is Batum.
Yes.
I mean, he sat like 5 minutes in that game.
That's what I was saying. It was like a Gobert and Fournier team before. Now it feels like a Wemby Batum team because one better type of player.
If Batum is hitting that top of the key three, they're going to be really hard to beat.
I do think, like, overall there'll be different games, I'd assume, against different opponents where you see a little bit more of the Gobert look with Wemby. Maybe it is the 4 or 5 pick and roll, and that stuff. I think if a Wolves fan is watching that and you're thinking about it, you can kind of start playing some fun cat and Gobert games in your head about how those two can play off each other, offensively in that sort of way. I guess I wouldn't have too much time on France, but I do think Rudy is a better defender than Wemby right now.
Yes. Well, I mean, again, I think he is how do you say it? It's like
it's more precise. That's what I wrote down in my stuff. Like
it's like if you have a beautiful woman who is like mature, I mean, she's beautiful because she's like 29, 35 and still beautiful, but also just something about the way she carries herself. She knows a little bit about life, etc. Versus like a 19-year-old, just gorgeous ingenue, That's two different types of attraction. Mm-hmm. And you can't say one is prettier than the other. I would say, I mean, Wemby is kind of in an ingenue stage of being a defender. And Gobert is that mature, fully formed defender. So
yeah, no, I think so. And it's like Wemby still covers up for so much of it just because he is so big and does have so much range that he can cover. And I think like that precision from him will come sooner rather than later. That will make Wemby a better defender than Gobert. But right now in pick and roll coverage, Gobert is better.
I agree with that.
Than Wemby is at that. That's going to come. It's just funny. We were talking about, we're looking up the win totals or whatever. And I had that up. So I clicked on like the defensive player of the year. Wemby is like minus 190. Mm-hmm. Like that's like
they know
6% chance that
a lot of
Wemby's
people thought he got robbed last year, which is not true. But it's
and Gobert won't win it again because
no, he won't. He won't.
But he was 12-1. Or 13-1 or something like that. But so I say that to mean I think Rudy still serves a huge purpose with this team, and as they, whether it be Team USA or even just like playing Germany or something like that, where there is more pick and roll to navigate and those sort of things. If they play like when they play Australia, Gobert will serve more of a purpose thing to be like, oh yeah,
exactly.
Okay, there he is. He just wasn't.
Yeah, he's a better defender on Landale than Wemby.
Yes. Landale and Giddey look pretty good.
I love that Australia team, man.
I know, man. They're fun. No, like so little Ingles, like out of the rotation.
No Ingles. I mean,
he played like 3 minutes in the beginning of the second quarter or something. But like it's
because they've got, Dyson Daniels. Where did he get offense all of a sudden?
Well,
the guy couldn't hit a shot in New Orleans. With Alvarado, you didn't see the Puerto Rico game, but Alvarado came out on fire against South Sudan and hit like 14 points in the first 10 minutes. And I'm thinking, me and the Pels, I've got a soft spot for the Pels in terms of the fact that I think they're really good. And they lost JV, but I do think that if Daniels steps up his offense and Alvarado is there.
Daniels is on the Hawks now.
Oh, shit. Well, there you go. That's why I haven't done my homework.
Well,
how did he get there? Was it a
that was the
free agent?
That was the
the Dante Murray. That's right. Well, they have Murray now too, so that's pretty good.
Right. No, I mean that doesn't take away from the Pelicans probably still got better.
But the Hawks can use Daniels, and he's also a pretty good offensive player all of a sudden. But having defenders in the backcourt to help Trey is very good for the Hawks.
Yeah.
Anyway,
he was just swallowing people up there.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do Team USA a little bit here.
Yeah.
I mean, we can talk about Ant, but I think if we're just watching that game, obviously the biggest thing we take away from that is KD. Yeah. And what he looked. I mean, he finished the game with 23 points in 17 minutes. I think he had like 19 at halftime without missing a shot.
Yeah. Exactly.
Just scary, like.
All within the flow of the offense. There was one highly contested shot. I think it was maybe Jokic closing him up or somebody like that. Right. But I mean, he hit, the classic mid-range he does, but he was hitting threes. And I know that the Olympic three is shorter than the NBA three. Right. But that was one of the things that I think hurt Phoenix last year is KD was not a really great three-point shooter. Mm-hmm. And I don't understand that at all. I mean, he should be an NBA three-point shooter much more than he is. Yeah. He still is like really high up on the list of mid-range shooters, and it just seems wrong. It seems like a place where Phoenix can improve next year is if they had KD. Oh, maybe he only makes 38%, But I mean, a volume 38% shooter to play alongside Devin Booker, in that spread out offense, that would be fantastic. So anyway, I thought he was great. I thought both LeBron and KD, to a lesser extent Curry started terribly, but LeBron and KD they've won gold medals fairly handily when they've played, and they do expect nothing less. And that is why I think that's the big difference between this year's team and the World Cup team last year. They didn't really have any guys that were like, they were the best player on a gold medal team numerous times. I mean, when you have that, both LeBron and KD expected good things to happen whenever they made a decision. And LeBron had 6 turnovers, so sometimes it didn't. But it was still, they were obviously the key.
Yeah, it's interesting. It feels like, and different than the World Cup team last year, is this Team USA team kind of like plays with the energy that we know one of our guys is eventually going to get scalding hot.
Exactly.
So they're just like, they're just like kind of surviving. I was thinking that in the context of, they played Jokic in the first game, right? And if and when Jokic got the ball in single coverage in the post, as he does against Joel Embiid, against Anthony Davis,
cuts.
Yeah, or he can just go score and draw a foul there. So I'm watching the beginning of that game, and I'm like, well, this is going to be a problem. Like this is going to be a effective way that Serbia can generate offense the entire game. We've seen a million times we say with Denver, but as is true with Denver, Jokic can't play the whole game, or there's a fatigue factor of just dumping it into the post and posting up against Joel Embiid, 15 times in a game. So the U.S. was just kind of like, that'd probably be 2 points. You're not going to do it every possession. And we got Kevin Durant here about ready to check into the game. And then it just like kind of blows him out of the water. And I actually think that's like Ant's role too. I don't know if KD's going to remain coming off the bench, but I think it's that idea of when they're playing any of these other good other teams, like one of Ant or KD are coming in off the bench as your 6-man bucket getter. And odds are one of the two of them are going to, in fact, get buckets. Crazy. It's a cool, interesting role for Ant specifically.
And it isn't even necessarily something that Ant has to do. I mean, one of the things that I've actually been really thrilled about just reflecting, seeing Ant in his role this year, and those comments about number one option, and that got blown out of the water in a really stupid way by click media, fucking assholes. But I think that what Ant has done is he was the guy because he earned it in the World Cup.
Yeah.
And then he came here and he is learning how to be a cog on a great team. And that is enormously important for
Great
that
point.
guy.
Great point.
That is such an important schooling for him. You could see him consciously turning down shots a couple of times when he said, wait a minute, Kevin Durant hasn't missed a shot. He's right over there, or, whatever. And I just think that deference and also his commitment to defense. I mean, he did not double down well, and he still has a little problem spacing out sometimes on off-ball stuff. But he came in, blocked a shot right away, had a couple of other times where he just hounded somebody like he can do.
Well, we normally talk about that, like Ant when he is picking up the ball. Yeah. He like misses the first one and he tries to go again and then gets called for the reach kind of on the third sort of pump. Right. You can kind of get all three of those in FIBA or less often you're going to get called, get called for that. And Ant is a goon on the ball in this setting.
And plus, as good as the Wolves are on defense, he's playing next to Derek White and Drew Holiday right now. And you talk about the reason the USA will win the gold medal again, in addition to the leadership at the top, is they've got an enormous depth. And they've got guys, if you bring Derek White in against any of those other teams' second unit, they're dead. I mean, they will get shut down because there are numerous. They didn't play Halliburton and Tatum, I mean, they shouldn't play Embiid except in certain circumstances, maybe against France, but he clearly doesn't fit with the rest of the team.
Yeah.
And the entire team tried to fit around him in the first 10 minutes. And that's when Steve Kerr said, well, the hell with that. We got to, let's go. And what his choices are, AD and Bam. I mean, come on, man. It's just wonderful. But back to Ant, I just think that he can be that instant offense off the bench. That's kind of why they're starting Booker right now when KD isn't playing. And Booker, when he's on, is a phenomenal three-point shooter.
Right.
But I do think that Ant can be, one, the guy who hits from three, two, the on-ball defender who was not guarding the best player on the other team, but maybe the third best who's still really good. Mm-hmm. And then three, the thing about Ant, if he hits a couple of those threes, he's good for a couple at the rim right away. And that dipsy doodle that had Stephen Curry, that was a viral moment. We've seen him do it like probably half a dozen times. But that was fun. He had
another opportunity where he was in the corner. It was like one of his first touches, and it reminded me so much of the Watanabe dunk. Where he like kind of pumped and he had the guy, so the defender clears out. And so now it's like a 6'4" guy at the rim, and Ant stopped. He didn't go to do it, but I was like, that's kind of like an encapsulation.
His patience. I mean, he's got, only, I think he came down and shot a three early in the clock. I think that was his only shot that was not in the flow of the offense, compared to the World Cup. If you think about, he would come down and basically be the offense like 3 out of 7 possessions.
Oh yeah.
And that, that won't happen. That won't happen now.
Well, and he was efficient in this game. He was he played 19 minutes at 11 points, 2 for 3 from 3, 2 for 3 from 2. It is fun. It's reason if you even if you're like a Wolves fan, not really into the Olympics, it's cool to see all of these players play within a different context. But I think particularly Anthony Edwards. While we're here, let's let people know that they can go watch the game at Falling Knife Brewing Company. They're opening up earlier whenever these games are showing. So the next game is Wednesday for Team USA against South Sudan. That's a 2 p.m. tip. So they will be open in time for that game to start. So get into the tap room, watch with other Team USA fans. They'll also be opening early on Saturday morning. Maybe that one will be a little bit easier for people to get to. That's a 10:15 a.m. local tip. That one's against Puerto Rico. I think it's just it's a perfectly formidable excuse for drinking beer, during the day. Team USA at Falling Knife Brewing
Especially
Company.
when it's hot out. And it's hot.
Exactly.
Now.
It is hot. Oh, and they also wanted me to mention that they, on Thursdays with Trivia Mafia, are doing the Initials game, which I think listeners here locally of KFan know what the Initials game is. They're doing that on Thursday nights here starting, this week in August as well. I'll keep reminding you about that over the course of the month. But yeah, go to Falling Knife Brewing Company this week to watch these Team USA games. We're also brought to you by Supreme Lending. And go to twolvesmortgages.com if you are in the stage of life where you are trying to fund a home, whether it's a second property or maybe your first home or a second home. Ben Coulter and the Mortgage Dream Team at Supreme Lending, they're in Edina, Minnesota, and they want to help. You can contact them again at twolvesmortgages.com or call Ben at 612-268-5454. As you can see on the screen, they have the 8-day close where you can close your loan in as fast as 8 days. They have the $25,000 close on time guarantee. They guarantee your deal closes on time. They're also part of the Minnesota Housing Program, which provides up to $18,000 in down payment or closing cost assistance. Mention T-Wolves special. You may be eligible for your first year at 1% lower than your note rate. Again, up on the screen here, you see the QR code. You see the email address or the URL, twolvesmortgages.com. All right, Britt. We could keep going on with the Olympics stuff, but I just had underneath KD again, where my mind goes when I'm watching these a lot of the times is these players in the context of their NBA team, right? And the Phoenix Suns, good week for the Phoenix Suns, man. KD comes out, looks like that. And you signed Tyus Jones to a minimum contract. I know you were not at all a believer in Phoenix last season and proven right there. I was, as I kind of into this summer, been thinking about the West and the top of the West. I was kind of thinking, I feel like I'm going to be one of the people who's higher than most, maybe higher than everyone on Phoenix going into next season. I kind of believe in the idea of kind of like the Wolves experienced. It takes a year to kind of incorporate that top level talent. But now it seems like with the addition of Tyus, who I think we would agree is a pretty damn good fit in the context of that team, they might be a sexier pick in the West. I'm curious. I haven't talked to you at all about this since it happened, because I know you are not a believer in Phoenix. I am wondering how, I don't know, seeing this from KD did anything from you, but mostly just your thought on the addition of Tyus and where that maybe puts Phoenix in the greater Western Conference conversation.
Obviously, a floor organizer is important. And the thing about Tyus is he's a gentle leader, but his consistency draws respect from his peers. Mm-hmm. And so the question is, the question that always happens with super teams, to what extent is subsuming your ego going to help? And to what extent just flashing your talent? You have to strike that balance. It's so much easier to strike that balance when you have an orchestrator that doesn't turn the ball over, that gets you to your spots with your shot, who plays decent defense, always a key thing for Phoenix. So I think they'll clearly be better. I think it still comes down to what does Bradley Beal really have left, especially on defense, and how willing is he to be kind of a, I thought that team worked better when Beal was an adjunct rather than a main guy. And I think that's going to be a really difficult adjustment. It's kind of like it's become like the Westbrook adjustment, because he was forced to do it so often to the point where his skills atrophied, and now he's just like a minor role player that can be very impactful in certain spots. Beal's not there yet, but
no, but I've never heard of that before, but I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. And as long as you're saying in the context of it's not as low as the Westbrook one has fallen, it is kind of the same idea of in a new role, you're not as effective as you once were. And you kind of still sometimes play like you think you are. That's our last image of Bradley Beal, right?
Yes.
When they got swept by the Bulls.
And I also think that if Booker and KD are, they clearly have a chemistry, I think.
Yeah.
I think that Booker and KD aren't quite as redundant, but I also think that they still need the kind of players who will lift the team in ways that they can't lift the team. And Tyus really checks a lot of those boxes. I can't remember who they had on their draft. I actually can't now remember who replaced Vogel. Was it
Bud Budenholzer?
Bud Budenholzer, yeah. So that that may work.
And then they drafted Ryan Dunn, who.
Oh yeah, that's a guy, a terrible offensive player, but a phenomenal defender.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like jerking the other way, but at the same time, they need a lockdown defender. And if he is the the Drew Eubanks equivalent of a wing, then that's going to be good for them too. There's so much.
They need one of a Kogi, Little, or Dunn to be able to do that.
And so much went wrong last season, and predictably so, in my opinion. But you are right about the run it back theory, and you're also right about the idea that these guys have pride, and they need that balance I was talking about of tamping down your ego, but still playing in a way that's really good for your team, balancing that aggression. I think that humility does come when you've been kind of embarrassed, the way Rudy was embarrassed 2 years ago, and the way KD has now been embarrassed like 3 or 4 years in a row. And so as good as he is, he has not contributed to winning outside of obviously the Olympics recently in a meaningful way for quite some time now. A critic would say since he left Golden State. I wouldn't go that far. But I do think that KD on a team no longer guarantees that you're a home court advantage playoff team.
Well, I think that's which is the crazy part of this whole West is. I guess what I am saying is now I put Phoenix in that home court advantage conversation. The top 4, the end of the top 4.
Thunder, Wolves, Nuggets, Mavs.
We were talking about this before. Sorry, this isn't a great graphic up on the screen right now, but it's just
that's right.
my notes there. So this is just vague. I think this was FanDuel or something. The win total over unders they have.
Right.
Oklahoma City with the most first, 56.5. Minnesota and Denver both 52.5. Dallas 4th at 50.5. So that's kind of another tier break right there, as we would say. And then it's the 5 through 8 part of it would be Memphis 47.5, Sacramento 46.5, Phoenix 46.5, and the Pelicans 45.5, leaving the Lakers, the Warriors, and the Rockets kind of in the play-in conversation. Lakers 43.5, Warriors 43.5, Rockets 43.5. And then the Clippers 40.5 and the Spurs 36.5, kind of on the fringe of the play-in.
Right.
It's crazy because one of those teams has Kawhi Leonard and one of them has Victor Wembanyama. And then Utah at 27.5, Portland at 21.5 as the tankers down there. I guess, there's a lot we could talk about there, but specifically, where do you think about Phoenix in terms of, I guess they're tied for 6th on here at 46.5 with Sacramento.
I actually think that's a good group. I think that that is your fluid group, as much as there is a fluid group, in terms of the fact that I'd be surprised if any of those 4 teams missed the playoffs. at the
Eight of
same
them, yeah.
at the same time, I mean, I'm talking about Memphis, Sac, Phoenix, New Orleans. That four team pocket. I think they'll all be top 8 teams, but who will be? I think you could scramble those anyway. Sacramento improved this year. Phoenix improved during the offseason. Memphis obviously is going to have. Although it'll be interesting, you know, they drafted that big dude from Purdue. Is and so I don't know. I mean, it is.
I got Phoenix on the top of that group.
Well, and you could make a convincing case for it. I'll have to rethink now that I remember that DeJounte Murray is on the Pelicans. Is DeJounte Murray and McCollum and Zion and, you know, et cetera, et cetera.
No centers, but yeah.
Yeah, but on the other hand, no centers might be the thing for Zion, you know?
Yeah.
Taking people off the dribble from 15 in or from 9 in, low post. You know, if you don't have a center to clog up the lane when Zion wants to roll, you know, I could see that being really good. And then you have guys, you know, if Herb, the 3-and-D guy, is hitting from deep, and McCollum and Murray, you know, is a
still got Ingram as of now.
Ingram, yeah, that's an interesting. That's going to be an interesting determinant. If they could get a little bit better fit for Ingram, I'm thinking, you know, a better two-way player,
right?
Because, you know, they were actually, I think, top 5 in defense last year.
They were. I don't know. No, it's all kind of distant in my mind.
Yeah.
Like 2 years ago, they were. I mean,
I think they're
a second to.
That's right, and a lot of it is, you know, they had Valanciunas, they had some other people, but I do think with, you know, the likes of Alvarado, and is it Herb Jones? I'm afraid to say
Herb Jones.
It was him. Okay.
New Orleans finished 8th, but not 8th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second half of the season, maybe they were up.
Yeah, I mean, they're 113 and 6th is 112-9. So it's
okay.
I'm looking at cleaning the glass. They might have been 5th on NBA.
That's all right. Anyway,
so there's that group, right? And those are the threat group, the Memphis, Sacramento, Phoenix, New Orleans, that could threaten to be a home court advantage team.
Yeah, exactly right.
And probably one of them will, because if we look at the top 4 teams, we can paint like pretty much a fatigue story with every single. Not maybe we'll leave Oklahoma City at 1 up there because they're kind. I don't actually think they're like games ahead of the Wolves or Denver or whatever, but they're a little bit different. They're younger. Okay, well we can talk about that too. Yeah. But Minnesota, the reason Oklahoma City to your point, would deserve to be up there is they don't have the question marks Denver has about losing pieces of their bench after openly talking about how out of gas they were a season ago. Dallas, I don't want to short shrift them either, but you know, where's Luka going to be at the beginning of the season? How is that like? How is it going to fit together with Clay? I don't think there's like a certainty.
Clay is not going to help as much as they think he is.
Yeah, I get like
Clay is a name, and then you know it's Clay is bringing his legacy to the team, and that is not a positive.
Yeah,
I mean, this team is not lacking for star power leadership.
They are lacking for shooting. And he provides that.
Well,
I mean, in the finals, man. I mean,
think about that. I mean, Clay has been a phenomenal shooter. He's streakier and streakier. It used to be that his streaks, his ceilings were really high and his floors were really high too. Now he'll go numerous games being a below league average 3-point shooter.
I think what that is he started shooting, if I'm remembering this correctly, started shooting more threes per game or more threes relative per minute. So, you know, if you're playing fewer minutes, he really comes off as a bomber, you know. Mm-hmm. But last season he shot 39%, you know, from 3. I'm trying to look at it from a per 100 possessions standpoint. Yeah, I mean, it's over the last few years since he returned from the
Injuries,
ACL
right.
and Achilles. Like these last 3 years, he's averaging 15 threes per 100 possessions attempted, whereas before that he was like 10 or 11. So he's become a higher volume 3-point shooter, which I think leads to what you're talking about, right?
Inevitable.
Some
right.
some more volatility within it. I think I don't know. It's hard for me with Dallas to like believe that they're going to have their foot on the gas the entire regular season. It's hard for me to believe that Denver's going to have their foot on the gas for the entirety of the regular season, right? Like,
right.
and then the Wolves are less so that way, but they have some question marks about adjusting to a new roster, or at least the idea that it might take a little bit of time at the beginning of the year to acclimate the 19-year-old. I don't know. There's just some question marks about those teams in the home court advantage spot, which isn't to say that next group down that Phoenix is in doesn't have their own question marks.
Sure.
It certainly does. I certainly would take those teams to be like ahead of, or for sure the Wolves to be ahead of Phoenix or Oklahoma City, Denver, Dallas, maybe is close.
I agree with all that.
It's just not, it's not locked in at all. I look at that top 8, and the only team I feel super confident about being a home court advantage team would be Oklahoma City. I don't think the Wolves fall lower than like 5, and I think they probably finish 2 or 3.
I also think it's really going to be hard for Denver not to be a top 4 team as long as Jokic has Murray and a couple of other guys around. You know?
I agree with that. There's different conversations here, right? About we're looking at the win totals right now and stacking up seeding in the West, and that's a different conversation than which of these teams can win the championship.
That's exactly right. And
because the Pelicans cannot win the championship. The Suns, I would put in they could, just because they
have the upside
correctly.
Well, I mean, again, the reason there's a sexiness factor to those names is because if they're hot, it's like it is a big. The Suns have a bigger variation clearly than the Mavericks, in my opinion. You know, the Suns could crater. I don't think the Mavericks with Luka and Kyrie and, put Clay in there if you want, but also the Gafford and that kid who's Lively is going to be in his second year. I mean, they're not going to fall far. Yeah. And so Memphis is a different story. I mean, how long has it been now since Ja Morant really owned the team and was there and didn't have Dylan Brooks as like his hockey enforcer, and I mean all the and Steven Adams, and I mean all this talk about remaking a team, and Triple J, who knows, that guy is like better on paper than necessarily. He needs the right pieces around him to be his best self, and so. And they also have that kind of weird circumstance where you could say that they peaked. They were right up there, and they were one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the West, bona fide. And now that they got to reprove that. That's a little different hill for a young team to climb.
That was, the Jaren Jackson Jr. This is what I'm sure I'm wrong about jump shots all the time, but I know I was saying to you when that dude shot 39% as a rookie from 3, I was like, you cannot tell me you think that guy, the way he's shooting that ball, looks like he's going to be a 40% 3-point shooter for his whole career, and he has not been. That I think was a huge change in it, where some people have the mind that you're like, okay, this is like Cat. Right. It to some extent where you could play him at the 4,
but anybody watch him. I mean, Cat's got a shot, and Jackson's got a shot. That lean in
Jackson's
forward
shot looks like Leonard Miller's shot.
I wouldn't go that far, but I know what you mean.
I would. Mechanically it would. But yeah, I mean, Memphis is a really. I'm kind of high on Memphis though too. It's
Clark
all
Clark is fun. He's back, and provided he's healthy, right?
Yeah.
But
I don't know, man. This West is
always fun.
I do think those. I don't have the numbers up here anymore, but like the way the numbers kind of tier it out with Oklahoma City, clearly being up there above everyone else. I think it's a fair place to put it. And then Minnesota and Denver right there as tied for 2 behind them. I don't think that that's being
I think that
unfair to the Wolves. I think that's like the Wolves are clearly up there. That's what they're saying.
I don't have any huge outliers on this. I mean, I very rarely agree with the initial wins total as much as I do this time. I mean, the order of them, but also the gaps. I do think that I wouldn't necessarily I'd put the Mavs in kind of like their own category. I'd actually put the Thunder first, and then the Wolves, Nuggets, flip them 2, 3, however you want. And then the Mavs, I think, are 4. You can throw Phoenix in there if you want to, but I do think that those other 4 teams really do represent a different kind of fluidity. The Warriors are intriguing to me. We still don't know what's up with Draymond, right?
Do we ever?
I mean, but is he back? Is he going to be like, remember that team, you know? Yeah. So they're a fascinating team. What I do know is that the Thunder are really good. I mean, oh my goodness. You know, watching that Canada game, there's Dort's on the floor. Dort's on the floor with Shea. Lou Dort was plus 26 in 1735 of that Canada game.
They could not get the ball. They're playing Greece for those of you who weren't watching, and they could not get into offense
because they had Dort and Brooks. Dylan Brooks and Lou Dort. I can't think of
with Nikhil coming off the bench.
Yeah, but it was Nikhil didn't have the impact he did in the World Cup.
But they have a depth of perimeter.
And RJ Barrett was better this year than he was last year. But Dort and Brooks played together a lot, and they're a couple of surly, sons of bitches, man. Did you see Brooks, John, with that guy from Greece at the end? I mean, it looked like he was going to punch him.
It's like expected now.
And so Dort and SGA getting all these minutes together on the same team, and they play well together now anyway.
Right.
But it's just
and Dort can shoot now.
Dort can shoot. Dort's become a 3-and-D guy. I mean, I wouldn't take it to the bank on him.
I would agree with that.
He might.
He's got a little Jaren Jackson Jr. to his shot.
But at the same time, he's so much better than he was coming up. But then look at what they added: Hartenstein and Caruso. I mean, are you kidding?
Yeah.
I mean, they were a number 2 defense. I think I am pretty. No, maybe they were 3rd. Boston was 2nd. Anyway, they're right in there. And they just added. Caruso is a bona fide top 2 team, All-NBA 2nd or 1st team, take your pick. And Hartenstein is an engine, an engine at the post.
Presti really good defensively.
Presti really just knows what he's doing.
It is going to be interesting to see. So, like, they're going to need to. If you remember, we were talking about with France at the beginning, right? Like how France played before Wemby is they would they put like both bigs at the elbows, right? And they get into like different split action,
right?
Or like DHO stuff from there, which is something I think Oklahoma City will have to do in the Hartenstein minutes, right? It's not going to be that full.
Or just let him clean up on aisle 5. I mean, I know,
but where do you start the possession? You can't. You're not going to start the possession with Hartenstein in the corner.
No. But I mean, I think you can. You're talking about DHOs and low post screens and stuff.
Yes, I'm just saying what made fair. What Oklahoma City did last year was play 5 out in the drive and kick game. I mean, they looked the most like Boston. They're the only other team that had the personnel to be able to effectively do that because their 5 could shoot like
and a better transition offense.
Exactly. But they also were undersized. So the opportunity cost of the Hartenstein deal, even if it makes them better, is they are going to need to add an additional way to play offense. It's not just going to be, it can't just be that spread look. I mean, I don't know if this exists on Synergy or Second Spectrum or whatever, but I guarantee you Oklahoma City played the least minutes last season with a guy in the dunker spot.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And now there's just going to be a little bit more of a clog of that feeling, or that's where Hartenstein's going to fall to, because he's not going to spray out above the break to shoot a
Right.
3 or something like that. So there's some things they need to figure out there, though. But that team needed more size. It did to some extent, not in the way that some people I think went a little bit too far with that, but they did. It helps to add more rebounding. I think, and Hartenstein's going to be great for that. And then Caruso, I mean, yeah, you talking about Dort and Caruso on the perimeter. Woo!
And SGA, who's no slouch, and he's 6'6".
Yeah, steal, and it just lets him kind of go into the Kobe role of just like trying to.
And you got rid of Giddey, who was, despite everything he does well, is a little bit out of sync in terms of just the personality of the team.
Well, it's the setup of that team.
Giddey is a fancy pants. Giddey's a fancy pants kind of player. And OKC is a run up and down the floor and drive and kick and get turnovers. And I mean, they've got a little of that Vando Pat Bev personality. And they've also got a leader who is just incredible. Talk about a guy who you don't think can always get his own bucket, but always can get his own bucket, you know? I mean, SGA does not need a point guard. No. On the other hand, a lot of those guys on that team do, and Caruso is not terrible at that, you know? Mm-hmm. I mean, and Giddey obviously was better, but Giddey was also a little bit more, like I said, less basic. I mean, one of the things about that, they are a bread and butter team, and they have a great coach. I mean, I think they might win 60 games.
Well, the over-under is 56.5.
I'd take the over.
Wow. For the Wolves to be on the Thunder's level, I think one variable that probably just has to hit is Rob Dillingham, which is to be at that level, the level you're putting him.
Yeah, exactly.
The Wolves, high 50s.
Right.
Yeah, like high
matching
50s.
Last season's win total.
Dillingham would need to be able to fulfill the role that he is being.
Be everything that Tim Connelly said he was.
Yeah, I mean, maybe like 80% of it, but like, not be a problem in the role that Tim Connelly and Chris Finch have assigned him to. And I just wanted to make sure. I mean, we talked a lot about Rob Dillingham on previous episodes.
Yes,
but again, that fifth game was different than the first four, and I think that's really, for me, been very balancing in my overall perspective of what Dillingham was in Summer League. And again, I'm absolutely acknowledging the sample size is small, and to have a shift come in the consolation game against the Orlando Magic, and
who had a lot of their players go. I mean,
they were Culver.
They were they had a thin team. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
and it wasn't the same team they had before.
It just was good to see Rob
hit his shot. It looked like what was good was John Hollinger wrote something that actually put a finger on some of the things I was saying about Dillingham's. Even when he wasn't quick enough to consistently get separation out on the perimeter. And if you're that small, that's a really, really concerning factor. And we saw him get separation more in that Orlando game, and that was helpful. I also think that if Rudy Gobert is setting screens for you, you're going to get separation a lot more than if somebody else in Summer League is setting. So I'm not, again, I said this before.
I'm really glad you brought this up.
I'm not ripping Dillingham. I'm just saying that of the concerning aspects, I actually think a lot of them will be solved with time. The question is, we talk about timelines all the time.
Yeah.
Tim Connelly rolled the dice on this timeline because he immediately has to be a good player, and he's 19.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
Tim Connelly rolled the dice because
he had
dice because those were the only dice allowed to roll through the salary cap,
and they didn't have 1 through 6 on them, right?
Yeah. Came up 8. No, but I'm glad you brought up the separation thing because I don't even whatever. This is a conversation that maybe it was Hollinger started.
Maybe somebody else said.
No, I think maybe Nate Duncan and stuff too, because I got some mailbag questions. So multiple people brought this up to me when I asked for mailbag questions, and I've seen it like on Reddit too. I think I did this morning. I watched back Dillingham's synergy clips from the 5 games. He does not get as good of separation in the first probably like 3 games. In the 4th and 5th, it was better. Is that comfort? Is that playing a shittier team? Another factor I would throw into the ether, and I'm getting a little bit snowed here, but talking to some people, I think Rob was not 100% healthy when he first got there. So I bring that up because that would make sense if he came in with a little bit of an ankle, to summer, like fine enough to play, like it wasn't like risking anything. But if you had, then that narrative fits the arc of what his games look like. Because it was bad at the beginning. First game was bad.
Right.
And it looked really concerning from a size standpoint because he wasn't getting separation and he was that small. So did his ankle, foot, whatever kind of heal over the course of the 2 weeks? And then by the 5th game, it was a little bit healthier and he was able to get some separation? Or was he just now being guarded by Jarrett Culver rather than an actual NBA player
another thing that I think may have been happening, especially in the first game, was I think he wanted to show he was a point guard. And what that means is that if you're thinking about dishing and ball movement, you're less apt to be as alert for the lane or the split second when you can beat somebody off the dribble. And I think that some of it was his decision-making was not, in fact, and this actually made me feel good because my biggest questions about him coming in, I knew he could pass at the college level. Could he dish dimes on a consistent basis? Could he be a point guard, a backup point guard? And, the jury is still somewhat out on that, but I was pleased with the idea.
In the Orlando game, man. He started getting buckets. Started getting buckets. So in the second half, they started bringing the big up, right? The up to touch coverage, high wall thing we always talk about. It was even that big 7'1" Jay Huff guy. They were like, get up there, get the ball out of Dillingham's hands. And what stood out to me when I started watching the Kentucky stuff at first, back after he was drafted, he faced that coverage all the time. Because if you would play him in a drop, he'd just pull up and he was making pull up threes, right? So the big was up and Dillingham, for being small, and this was the first thing that really got me on the Trae Young sort of thought, was Trae sees that coverage a lot, right? Kind of you kind of bring the big up and you try and get the ball out of his hands. And Trae's pretty good for being small at like slinging it over the top or even all the way to the corner. And that showed up on the Kentucky tape for Dillingham when I went and watched it. And I'm like, man, what am I reading about this guy not being able to play make at all? Like I'm seeing it here against this coverage. He did that in the Orlando game there. And I think that would be such a weapon if he could do that on the second unit for the Wolves. If they're going to have to play an aggressive coverage against Rob Dillingham and he's flanked by one of Cat or Nas, and just everything that falls off behind that, you got a shooter, you got Joe Ingles in the corner, or you got Cat in the other corner right there. If they have to play that coverage against Rob Dillingham because he's hurting them otherwise, that is going to open up a whole nother level of the offense for the Wolves that they did not have in their second unit offense last season. Should we be banking on that when he's 19 years old? Probably not. I don't know, but I'm telling you, I saw it in the Kentucky tape and I saw it in that Orlando game that he looks comfortable against a coverage that's trying to get the ball out of his hands. And that, not a lot of quote unquote bucket getters get that by the time they're 25.
That's true.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. And that's the optimistic / realistic scenario of that.
I mean, I'm trying to like kind of counterbalance. The first 4 episodes, like 3 episodes, whatever we did of Summer League, I was like, I'm concerned, guys. He looks really small to me and he's not really doing a lot of anything. He looks like he's trying on defense. Shot's not going in, that it moved the needle for me quite a bit, or at least got it back to neutral. Like I'm not leaving Summer League now with real concern. He didn't blow me away, but he didn't underwhelm me when I put all 5 games into the
right. Well, and let's also say that this guy is meant to be a transition ball player. I mean, he is not meant to be a half-court guy. And if you think about it, Nas, the Iowa Ants' whole philosophy was up and down, up and down, up and down. Yeah. And Finch really leaned into that, both during the, when they introduced the draft picks, but also when that exit interview time where he was talking about we need to get better in transition. Mm-hmm. For a team that played defense as well as the Timberwolves did, their inability to score in transition, which is the most efficient offense in the NBA, is clearly, you talk about low-hanging fruit, that's like the apples on the ground that haven't rotted yet, It's like, totally. And so you have to be better in transition. And where Dillingham makes the most sense for me is the word I would use for him temperamentally is he's a rollicking kind of player. He wants to, it feels like he wants to have like a little giddy up right off the dribble, do stuff, move it around. He doesn't want to be Anthony Edwards surveying the court off the bounce. He wants to be somebody who gets things going. Yeah. And when there's transition, and it was kind of cool because the summer league teams got guys like Minot and Miller and all these guys who love to run up and down. And one of those guys may find minutes, in that second unit come time. And so, especially if Ingles gets hurt at age 38 at some point and, right. You have a situation. I just feel like there are ways in which we can allow Dillingham's game to mature in its own way, and also have him not be a deficit. It's kind of like Nas in some respects. I mean, sure. Even when Nas clearly had things that didn't work out for him, it felt like during the development, there was enough things there to enable him. Now, the plus minus and the net ratings disagree with that. They would say, Nas got killed a few of those years. But I also do think that if he's on the floor in that kind of spread out, here we go.
But that might be a good reminder. Sorry, to the Nas point, like the Nas number, we talked about this over the time too, and he always had like the worst net rating, but this is because he was never playing with Cat, who is the player who drove the net rating for all the other teammates, right? He was Cat's backup, or even the year prior to this one, he never played with Rudy, right? Right, so his numbers just took a hit there. Sometimes net rating does lie to us,
right?
Or we just need to factor in, who those players are playing with, and that can happen to Rob too, right? Where, I mean, another key driver of net rating success is the Mike and Rudy combination.
Right.
Well, how much is Rob Dillingham going to play while also flanked by Mike and Rudy? Probably very little.
And a guy who would have been invaluable for him, Slow-Mo, is not on the team.
And that's why it's so important.
Slow-Mo in that second unit,
What are you thinking of it for like a good Rob Dillingham group? Because it's not just the bench, right? He's not going to just play.
I would like to have Ant on that second unit as much as possible. Yeah. I want him to be the second unit guy. I think that the team can function very well without him in the first unit, and then have him finish. Obviously, have him be. I know that Rudy and Mike were the first guys off the floor, and that will probably hold just given their age. But there needs to be a way to get Ant more second unit minutes, and maybe that means Cat more first unit stabilizer.
I think that's the question, right? Because it's like, all right, general first quarter of a game or third quarter of a game, about 6 minutes in, Mike and Rudy come off.
Yeah.
About 9 minutes in, Cat comes off. 12 minutes in, or at the end of the quarter, Ant comes off. So I think if you're Finch or Nori or whatever, you're thinking about it, like maybe the switch is Cat and Ant. Does Cat play the whole? If you wanted to have Ant in with Rob on the second unit, maybe that's the switch there. I just think if Ant is still going to remain in his 12 minutes of playing the entirety of the first quarter and the entirety of the third quarter, well, I'm not sure he's going to play with Rob Dillingham.
Absolutely. And that's what
like,
and you do not need, I never liked the idea of all 12 minutes of the third quarter for Ant. I don't like it, and
I think that's a him preference thing.
It might be. In which case, you got to give it to him.
I'm 99.9% sure. I think that's a request. But I don't know. Maybe you can convince him into to something.
Well, and having him on the floor. And again, we get back to one of the things that I think is kind of cool is that this is the first set him up on a platter. This is the tailor-made mentee for Anthony Edwards. This is the guy that Ant gets to be the big brother for this time, and he's at that stage in his career. He's got the credentials and the personality, and he's done it for Jade McDaniels, but he will do it for Rob Dillingham. And if he can play with him at the same time, I mean, imagine all those threes that Jade McDaniels gets in the corner because Ant is driving, Imagine Dillingham getting enough of those where he becomes comfortable in the NBA. And imagine transition with those guys, lobbing and whipping passes around. I mean, if you want Rob Dillingham to break out of the gate in a way that ensures that he will have a great start to his NBA career, get him some minutes with Ant and get out and run. Iowa Ants Revisited, because that will really, really help. And it will also hide the loss of slow-mo on that second unit.
I want to keep going with this. Let me grab another quick break here. Today's show is brought to you by Adriana Lonick at Coldwell Banker Realty. And you can see up on the screen here, if you go to the dancingrealtor.com, which is Adriana's website, you get this splash page here, which has a button you can click to win free Timberwolves tickets. You get that if you are in the process of wanting to purchase a home, and you contact Adriana to set up a consultation for a home purchase. We talked in the previous ad about financing a home. Well, the first step is finding that home that you want to buy or to sell. And I really do recommend working with Adriana. You can, again, go to the dancingrealtor.com, set up that consultation, be entered to win some Wolves tickets. Or you can call or text her at 715-304-9920. I know a handful of you have already been in the process of working with Adriana. But if you're thinking about making that home purchase or selling your home, or maybe purchasing a second property, it is about working with someone who can help get you there. And I really do recommend just sending up a free consultation with Adriana at the dancingrealtor.com. Today's show is also brought to you by Your Home Improvement Company. If you already do own a home and you are looking to remodel that home this summer, really good deals from Your Home Improvement Company on both bathroom and window remodels. If you are looking to replace your windows, they have a promotion this summer for buy two, get two triple pane windows free. They come with a lifetime warranty. Or for a bathroom renovation, it can be a simple tub to shower conversion or a full-on bathroom remodel. Those are 30% off this summer. Again, this is Your Home Improvement Company. You can go to yourhomeimprovementco.com, or you can contact them at 866-777-YHIC. If you need to get a home project done, keep it in the Wolves family here at Your Home Improvement Company, where it's your home made better. All right, Britt, I cut us off a little bit on the Dillingham piece. I meant to do a mailbag last week. I didn't get around to doing it. So I just kind of tucked some of these questions.
Let's run through.
Yeah, I tucked a couple questions in to do an episode with you here. I'm going to be with Kyle later in the week too. So we'll try and hit a handful of these. There's a lot of point guard related questions. And I feel like that kind of plays off of what we were just talking about with Rob. Daniel at large asks, are they looking to add a third point guard, or do they wait it out with Rob/Knicks, see how it looks after a couple months? Or do they have plans to use that final roster spot on a point guard? I don't know what their plans are in terms of what they're waiting around looking for. I know the Tyus Jones situation was not a realistic one for them. They could only offer the minimum, and they could not offer Tyus a starting spot. So that one didn't go anywhere. Obviously, Tyus took that deal. But how are you just kind of thinking about the point guard position? That seems to be the sort of, or the depth of the point guard position seems to be kind of a topic of concern amongst Wolves fans.
I'm comfortable with it.
I think I am too.
I think that Ingles is a poor man's slow-mo. I think that he can be a distributor. It will, most of the time, he's an initiator on the wing. He's not a center of the floor guy as much as slow-mo was. So it's a little bit different tweak. Dillingham, as you mentioned, is not going to immediately be a really adept playmaker, but he is going to be somebody who is going to be often effective. And then I think people forget that before Mike Conley came along, there was a lot of talk about, well, what about Ant just being the point guard?
I talked about it a lot.
And so I don't think that's ideal, but I also think, again, this Olympics experience is going to be good in terms of getting off the ball with a simple pass is a good thing. I think that Nah is not a terrible backup point guard in a pinch. And also the way the NBA is trending, we forget that pure point guards are fewer and far between.
Right.
And so few and further between, I guess. But and Nick's, I like Nick's size. Nick sounds like a impoverished man's, Shake.
Shake Milton.
Yeah. So there's enough around there. It would have been great. Anything you would have gotten out of J-Mac would have gotten in the way of Dillingham. What they want is for Dillingham to be a super J-Mac anyway.
Yeah.
So you don't put the resources you put in to get Dillingham and keep somebody like J-Mac around or anybody like J-Mac. Instead, what you have is like a guy who can body up, twos and threes as well as ones, and that's Nick's to some extent, provided, he gets that kind of burn. And then you have guys like Ingles and Ant and Nah who can do the rest. And
Dozier even. Yeah.
Yeah. Dozier.
Well, I just think that's the idea. Like whoever you were going to get as a point guard on the minimum, like what were the odds that they as a minimum point guard were going to be able to give you more than the sliver that Nikhil's going to be able to give you a backup point guard, or Ant taking on a bigger sliver of backup point guard, or Ingles doing some of it. I don't think, even Dozier, like, I don't think any of those guys you want to like spill over into like, hey, for this month, we're playing you 20 minutes a night as backup point guard. Like, no, but that's not the role. That is not a need right now. So I don't know if that need presents itself, maybe sometime during the season, somebody gets hurt or Dillingham really shows he's not ready, then maybe you have more of a need to go out and get somebody who's more than a minimum player. Trade, I don't know, that's gonna be harder, second apron and all, but I just, it's easy at this time of year with a normal minimum point guard player, not Tyus Jones, to get excited about what they might look like it. But the reality of the situation is a minimum player is not going to give you much.
And let's remember that they brought in Monte Morris, and he's a quality backup point guard. The idea of Monte Morris and Tyus Jones on the same team in Phoenix actually is really a good upgrade for them.
Yeah.
But they did not have room for Monte Morris. Now, some of that was slow-mo, but Ingles is meant to be, kind of like the switch out. And now you have added Rob Dillingham again.
Mm-hmm.
It is a bold move, I think, to have somebody 19 years old in that much prominence. But you did not draft Rob Dillingham to come into his own after Rudy Gobert is gone.
Right.
You had him on a crash course to maybe not peak, but understand who he is and what he is in terms of this rotation, if not right away in the first 2 or 3 years, in which case Gobert and Cat, that's their timeline. And then, if you have guys like McDaniels and Ant and Nas all still around hitting their prime, that's Rob Dillingham perfect,
Right.
So if you look at what the team is doing, you can decide your own roster construction, what you think should be done. It doesn't matter. Tim Connolly and Chris Finch have decided what they're doing, and it's pretty obvious,
Right.
And they're throwing Dillingham in the pool, and if it doesn't work, they'll go with Nah, and they'll go with Ann a little heavier, and they'll go with Ingles getting a little bit more playmaking in the sets. But and not for nothing, getting out in transition just in general, having Nas, with the ball, 2-on-1 with a guy on his left. That's the kind of thing. Who needs a point guard?
I also that's kind of my biggest thing is I think Nickeil has a lot more room to show more as a point guard. I think that's the one. Even if hopefully Rob overall has a year where he's able to fulfill that role. I kind of think to some extent he will be. But there'll probably be periods of time where he's struggling, or maybe there's a resistance to play Dillingham too much because the defense hasn't put the defense together yet. Whatever.
That's a very good point. We haven't even talked about his defense.
Yeah, well, we have on the previous episodes.
Yeah,
this was the okay, everything's all right with Rob Dillingham episode. But I think Nickeil can give you that. It's a pretty basic style when he's on the ball. It's very like slow, set up, run floppy. Here we go. It's straight to the point. But I don't mind that. I don't mind that if he's out there at the point guard with those guys.
Especially if he can finish like he finished last year.
Yeah,
at the rim, because that's what he couldn't do when he came here.
That's what he couldn't do at the beginning of his career. Like that's his one stat that has been trending up and up and up. I think he was 42% at the rim his rookie year.
Finishing in traffic was a revelation this year. It was a lot of fun to watch, and it was why he had these 26-point games every now and then. Was where he was hot from outside, but then he got out in transition, and he also had these times where, especially against second units, he challenged the defense off the bounce, and that's what you want, And so I agree. It gets back to this whole idea. Daishen Nix, if he wasn't on the roster right now and they added him tomorrow, you go, okay. Well, they got Daishen Nix now. And so
totally.
All right. So he's already there. He's a two-way, isn't he? Still?
Yeah. Still
okay. So there you go. So all these backup contingencies are still in place. And they're going to ride the way they ride, and we'll see what happens.
No, I'm glad we're on the same page there. I get why people are asking about that, but I think it's like just putting those 4 different slivers together.
Well, it's Conley's age too. I mean, let's face it.
True. That's true.
The guy miraculously played a lot of great minutes last year, and that could be the thing. On the other hand, a minimum salary isn't going to address that either. So,
right. So if he's hurt, they were going to.
If he's hurt, then it is not an Ant who are going to have to carry the load.
So this question kind of ties into some of what we were talking about with the win totals earlier. Bruce Jellin asked, assuming their top 7 are healthy and that Dillingham will be the 8th man, how much success do they need to have before the trade deadline in order for things to not get really uncomfortable?
Well, again, context is everything, right?
Yeah.
Is Dillingham steady on the arrow upward as the 8th man? Are the things that worked last year still working? Has Gobert lost a step? Has Nas gained a step? Is Ant taking another step forward in his superstardom? I mean, all of those things. But if the question is, if they're 5th at the trading deadline and in danger of not being a home court team in the playoffs, and there's an obvious hole in the roster, I think Tim Connelly will try to patch it. I think that he's in it to win it. Mm-hmm. And I don't think they'll take a mulligan on a season unless they're like 8th because of a lot of injuries or something just didn't work. But I do think that Connelly will, it's been his history to go out and get something at the trade deadline when they need it, and also to be bold in the draft when he can be. So I don't think that they will.
I mean, you're more saying like doing a Monte Morris type acquisition again, based on whatever that hole
probably,
is.
unless again, context is everything. What if what if they need a point guard, and then you just say to yourself, all right, we're gonna have to lose Nas because we need a quality point guard for the stretch run, or we're gonna have to lose.
Yeah. See, that's just a whole that's a much different than the Monte Morris sort of thing. Of
exactly, it is. But that's where I say, if you're 6th and yet you're 4 games out or something of 3rd, that type of thing at the trade deadline, and it's because of something obvious. If somebody's hurt or somebody is not the player that they used to be. But because the question he's really asking, in my opinion, is are they in it to win it, or are they going to suffer through a season and readjust in 25, 26? I think Tim Connelly is in it to win it.
I think there's a greater conceit to that question than even that. I think the question is, will they trade Cat? If they're at a position that they might, or even because, or maybe it wouldn't even be Cat. Maybe let's do Cat, Nas, and Jaden. Would they trade one of those guys at the deadline if things weren't coming together? Because that's part of the salary cap reality is they can't just go trade a 2nd-round pick to Detroit for Monte Morris
exactly
next season and add on more salary.
Right.
They would need to make a trade in which they took back less salary than they sent out. Well, how do you do that meaningfully without trading, one of those guys? Maybe Nikhil. Maybe you get out ahead of trading Nikhil because I think it's probably very unlikely that he resigns, next summer, just given he's probably, I don't know, like he's going to go from 4 million to what, 20 million a year.
But he loves it. He loves it here.
I know. I'm these are all like,
no, I get it.
We're setting up the scenario, which you said, of lower in the standings. They have an obvious need that the roster itself cannot take care of it, or it's determined the roster itself can't take care of it. Well, then your options are like trading for a minimum player. Okay, that's probably not going to answer that question.
No, it's not.
So the way to do it would be a bigger trade, and there's a cascading downwards of like Cat, Jaden, Nas, Nikhil, something like Rudy. It's hard to get into any of those things, even in my mind, because I think they need to be a lot worse than 5th. If they're the 5th seed and they're a couple games out of hosting a home court advantage or having home court in the playoffs, I think they just roll with it and try and win more games down the stretch and get that home court advantage, in that sort of way. As we talked about with the Western Conference, they could very well be like where the Clippers were last year. Remember, where it'd be like, sometimes the Clippers are the 2nd seed, sometimes they're the 5th, like depending on what day of the week you looked at the standings. I don't know. They would, if they're like the 8th or 9th seed,
like Dallas. At the deadline.
That's a good example. That's a good example of like, do you make some sort of aggressive move because you're all in, or do you? Yeah.
And it was a brilliant move. Mm-hmm. I mean, getting those 2 guys, both of them were, first of all, they had draft picks. The Wolves.
I know. Yeah. It's apples to oranges.
And then second, I mean, I forget who it was that they dealt somebody who was in their rotation who was pretty good, if I'm not mistaken.
In that deal,
it was either the Charlotte deal or the Washington deal. I can't remember.
They got rid of Hardaway and Green. They lost this summer.
Yeah,
I'm drawing a blank. But the example of that would be like the Wolves trading Naz Reid so as to get Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington.
Right, exactly.
That whatever the equivalent of those holes are, but
right. And maybe it's a point guard equivalent. Maybe it's Tyus Jones. You know,
Well, that would be the minimum.
Yeah.
I don't think like if the Wolves are like the 5th seed a couple months into the season, and I don't know, I think it's
we're
just
talking
important
about
to
more than a
judge.
couple of months. We're talking
Yeah,
October
that's
to
true.
February.
But I am saying even if it's like December or whatever,
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah, you gotta wait. You gotta wait that long.
yeah, I just given what the West is going to feel like from a congestive standpoint, 1 through 7, 1 through 8 up there, I think there's going to need to be some patience with the
Right.
Wolves, particularly if it's taking Dillingham a while, to adjust. They have lost Kyle Anderson and a little bit of their defensive teeth by replacing Ingles.
Right.
And my guess would be that's where they're going to kind of be at too. Also, half this team, half the rotation is playing in the Olympics right now.
Yeah. Well,
It'd be naive to not think that that's going to have some sort of impact.
This is
right?
fast forward me into pre-annoyance in terms of the fact that if fans are going to be like fire Finch after every 2-game losing streak, or or
I didn't get any of those questions.
Thank God. But I mean that whole, that the sky is falling, that what I call the Vikings mentality.
Yeah.
But in some ways, the Vikings mentality is appropriate because they only have 16 games, and if you lose 2 of them, that's an 1/8 of your season.
The reason I did that question was because I think the question, depending on how you read it, is at what point do you start freaking out? And my point is, when you brought up 5th seed at the beginning, I'm not freaking out if at the deadline they're the 5th seed. That's what.
Unless they are like 3-7 and 5 games out from 4th seed.
Yeah.
Which is possible. All I'm saying is what I said to start all of this was context matters.
Right.
We have no idea. If they're at 7-3 and they're the 5th seed, or they're 4-6, but they won 2 out of 3 against really good teams on a road trip or something, you don't know. But you do know that the magnifying glass gets a little more concentrated around the trading deadline, and that is traditionally a time when football season's over and everybody's starting to shift, and here we go, and the Wolves don't want to lose this momentum. I think that Tim Connolly is very interested in establishing a high bar that doesn't account for 37 win seasons.
Yeah.
And I think that the way to do that, and he's worked really hard at it, is to patch holes before they're really, really injurious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, we got more to think about, and we'll have more context over the course of the season, we'll be able to better answer how important those holes are to patch or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
This one's just kind of I guess more fun. We'll just close it out with this.
All right.
At what point did it become clear to you that Ant was going to turn into one of the few mega stars of the NBA? You guys get to see these guys operate behind the scenes. Was it clear early on, when he wasn't absolutely lighting it up, that he was going to eventually get to this level? And what I thought when I read that was, we did not get to be around Anthony Edwards his first couple seasons in the NBA, because that was COVID, and I don't think I met Ant for the first time at Summer League, and I think that was a year or 2 years. I don't even, at least
probably 1 year. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. After that first year. So 2021, but we did get very little of that. So my answer to that question would be a lot later than I wouldn't say at all. I was like, oh, I saw it day one. I saw it at the end of his rookie year. I didn't. It would probably be, I don't know, like megastar. It wouldn't even be the Memphis series. It really, if I'm being totally honest, like megastar, like one of the best players in the league, it might have been that Phoenix series, or really at post trade deadline this year. I think that's where I really started shifting.
Yeah, I mean, megastar is. Where did I think he was on the glide path, where he finally, it was like taxied onto that runway? I think it was that January when D'Lo was out.
Okay. So
you remember when they were hurt? I think it might have been his second year, might have been his third, whatever that January was, where all of a sudden he became like a
Mhm.
playmaker
Mhm.
as well as a scorer, and carried that team for quite a while. I mean, was that the Vando Pat Bev year, or was that the year after that? It might have been the Vando Pat Bev year where they needed offense to balance the defense. It's all jumbled up now, but yeah. I do remember that January where I thought, you always likened him to Doncic, and I always likened him to Paul George or Jason Tatum, and it was the one time where I still don't, I've never thought he was Doncic, but I began to say, Dane is thinking about him as a playmaker more than I am. I feel like he'll get it 6 times because of what a scorer he is, like Paul George and Tatum. This was the one time where I thought he began to flash a kind of playmaking that I thought this guy can be like a playmaker, like the best of the guys,
Well, that's probably the whole answer to anybody who asks this. It's like, what was your initial bias, or what did you, when you pictured Anthony Edwards being a star, what did it look like to you? And for you, that was a different definition. If it's Paul George said that Luka Doncic, even if it was, wasn't strictly that. So that's why for me, it was after the trade that, but it was before the Phoenix series, because it was when Cat got hurt. It was when Cat got hurt and the team didn't die.
Right.
And instead, they actually got
going,
and drove them to the Western Conference Final. Cat, you needed that post-trade deadline or post-Cat injury push that started with him bonking his head on the rim in Indiana.
That's right.
That's it. That's what my answer of.
That's really, actually a really good. Well, that's a good answer, just in terms of the fact that whole road trip.
Yeah, which we happened to be at was
nuts.
Yeah, I know.
That was nuts. Even like they lost to Cleveland, and he was a monster in that game. It's just Rudy,
the buddy signal.
Rudy. Rudy's going to get suspended this year. That's my prediction. I have no doubt in my mind that he will. Rudy Gobert. He will not let that go. There will be a time where he believes that the crooked refs are screwed, and he will be so angry that he'll make that sign, and it'll be one time too many, and he will go for 5 games.
And that would hurt. That would.
I would be shocked if Rudy Gobert doesn't bring out the money sign one more time.
So would I. He was. Yeah, that was an interesting.
Was he repentant at all in Cleveland? No.
Let's keep that conversation private. All right, man. This is awesome. I love that we're still doing pods at the end of July. I'm pumped we got to talk about Dillingham, because that mattered to me. It's been cool to have these Olympics, and maybe we'll
for those who aren't following the Olympics, what I can tell you is, to be honest with you, South Sudan and Puerto Rico are the 2 next games. And so there aren't some great games right away for the USA, but there's a lot of really good brackets. And I think Canada and Australia are going to play in the second round series, and that's going to be fun.
I have that's tomorrow. Hold on. That's good podcasting. Tomorrow morning is Spain, Greece. Sorry, so this would be Tuesday morning, and Canada, Australia at 6:30.
Canada, Australia is going to be a great game, and then also I think France matches up with somebody pretty good.
Japan. At
10.
No,
okay, then it isn't. There's one. Who does Germany play?
Brazil at 2 tomorrow.
No, that's not it either. It might.
Later than Wednesday, Wolves play Wolves. Team USA plays South Sudan. Australia, Greece on Friday. Canada, Spain on Friday.
Canada, Spain, yeah.
France, Germany on Friday. That's probably
all right. There you go. That's probably a good one too. France, Germany, because it really is. Canada against Australia is going to be a really fun game. It's going to be a real physical game, and I don't know. And Serbia will play somebody pretty good probably coming up, or probably no. They play the same 2 teams that the Wolves will play.
The Wolves. We just both did the Wolves thing. Where are they? They're playing Puerto Rico
and then South Sudan. Yeah, because they were in the bracket.
Yes.
All right, but anyway, my point stands, and maybe this week isn't the thing, but when all these teams we're talking about, when Canada and France and the USA and Serbia and Germany and Australia all come out of these brackets, there's going to be some good basketball.
Yeah, those rounds, and that will also like level up the amount of time the stars are playing for, like the amount of time, decreasing the amount of time Giannis or Jokic,
right,
or Shea or whatever sit. Yeah, and I the 2, 3, my 3. I don't know.
You got to.
I really like watching France. France has got to be up there. Canada was super fun in that last game,
and Australia is a real dark horse for me. I mean, they didn't even have
fun, but they're good.
They didn't even have Exum, And I will tell you, Patty Mills is one of those guys that loves international sports.
Yeah,
he's the captain of that team. He's never been the primary guy on any team,
right?
And he is, clearly the guy. He's the LeBron in his own way of Australia,
or the Dacian Knicks of Summer League.
Yeah, that's right. And then you got Giddy, and you've got Dyson Daniels and Landale, and they're well coached. They could pull off an upset.
Oh yeah.
On the other hand, they don't have the high level. He is probably their top. Let me think. Let me see what they have. They have Patty Mills, Landale, Exum, Daniels, Giddy, Deladova, Josh Green, and Ingles. I mean, that's a decent depth. But
I like that Jack McVay guy that starts from. He just signed a 2-year with Rockets.
No, wasn't McVay Spain, or was he Australia?
No, he was Australia.
Oh, was he Australia? Okay,
he was on the.
I saw so
Jack
many
jumpers. I know, man. I watched. So it was like I watched like 3 basketball games before noon on Saturday. I'm like, this is weird.
That's weird. Yeah,
that was weird. I might do it tomorrow. All right, we've been going for over 90 minutes. This has been fun. Yeah, Britt and I will talk again sometime in August. Again, Kyle and I are going to do on Wednesday after the second Team USA game. So we'll have another episode up Wednesday night. Again, August is kind of our downshift month that we'll have maybe 1 episode a week through that time, kind of figuring that out still. But I'll bug Britt to come back at some point, maybe in some point in August here to do another episode or 2. And obviously, if there's any news, we'll be on top of that too. But next up is me and Kyle. Until then, you can follow Britt on Twitter at Britt Robson. I'm Dane at DaneMooreProductions. Talk to you tomorrow with Kyle. Until then, peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.